Episode 3.
Yeah, here we are.
Episode 3. I mean, I don't know if we ever got to episode 1, but we're already on episode 3. We've kind of covered a couple things. But before I get into all that, how are you doing?
Well, I'm a little warm. It's hot outside in Seattle right now.
How hot's hot?
Well, today was, I think, only 87, but yesterday it was like mid 90s.
Yeah.
And it just stays warm in the evenings.
And you still sound like you've smoked 1,000 boxes of cigarettes because you're getting a...
Don't make me laugh.
That's my fault. It is my fault. But yes, if you're just joining us recently, Rachel has managed to get sick in the middle of the hottest time of the year. So it was fun for her.
It has been fun.
Yeah,
that's a good way to describe it.
A fun time. But we've covered a couple things. We've covered introductions. We've covered getting to a diagnosis or not a diagnosis in the case of Isaac, and then in the case of Nate. And I think the next obvious place to kind of spend some time is a little bit of this journey that goes on, or that went on for us at least, from getting the clarity that there was something not on typical developmental track, but not necessarily knowing if this was something that was going to be forever, or would he catch up, any of those kinds of things. And this, I think you've talked about it at times as what a lot of parents refer to as a grieving period. Yeah. And I think that's a pretty fraught word. So before we even get into like that process for us, can you talk a little bit about how in your work grieving is discussed, what it means for you, and what you think it comes up as for other people in the disability community?
Yeah, for sure. I first of all, grief and having some grieving after a diagnosis is really common for parents of kids with disabilities. It's something that most parents describe experiencing. Some don't. But the other side of the coin is the experience of people with disabilities who have a lifetime of hearing about their parents or other people grieving because of their existence. And that it gets old, and that is hurtful. And adults with disabilities have asked parents to stop talking all the time about the grief that their existence brought. And I hear that and I get that. And so like you said, it is a really delicate topic, and it's one that I try to talk about with a lot of sensitivity and nuance.
My recollection was was a pretty significant time in your life, in all of our lives, but especially I think for you, because even though we had talked about last time that I had this big career opportunity and I was traveling a lot, and that had come to an end. I mean, I still was working a lot, and it was a very intense time in my professional career. You were staying at home. You had this like 1-year-old that had all these needs and had appointments that it needed to go to. And you still had what, a 3-year, was Isaac 3?
He was 3.5 years older than Nate. So he would have been like 4.5.
And you had all of that to deal with. And it wasn't necessarily, you'd had experience with your first kid, and a lot of people have their second kid and think, okay, I have all this down already, so I'm going to know what to do. But
famous last words.
It was different.
It was.
And so I'm just kind of curious, like, how do you remember that time?
I don't want to get dramatic about it.
Oh, but get dramatic, right?
I mean, I remember it as a dark time.
Yeah.
I remember it as a heavy time where I was carrying a lot of sadness and grief and fear and anxiety and sleep deprivation, just the natural sleep deprivation that comes with small children. Um, I remember it just being a hard time. That would maybe be the simplest way to describe it.
When you think about this notion of grieving,
Yeah.
what comes to the surface for you about like what were you grieving at that time?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I wasn't grieving. I wasn't grieving this person. He was, I've said it about him before, the full package. Like he was just, as you know, brought a lot of joy, like we've
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah.
But I was grieving this picture of what I thought maybe our family was going to look like, and
Mhm.
some of the skills that I had planned to apply for my first. I was grieving, I think, a little bit of my innocence, uh, grieving being forced to grow up really quickly as a parent. Um,
I think you had some ideas about what the relationship between Isaac and Nate would be as well. That was a really big part of why you wanted to have a second child.
yeah,
Having a sibling was a big deal for you, and um, I assume that was also part of it.
yeah, it was. It was sadness for Isaac and also deep worry. I think we've said this previously. I didn't know what it's like for a person to grow up with a sibling with a disability, so I
Mhm.
assumed it would be a problem,
Yeah.
and it didn't. I mean, it's not without its problems, but it so much. I mean, in retrospect, so much of what was scared of and so much of what I grieved was I was wrong. Um, like a lot of what I thought was never going to happen has all happened. The good stuff, the making friends, the having a girlfriend, the going on adventures, the like loving each other as a family, all the things I was so scared was never going to happen. It turns out most of it did anyway, but it doesn't change that those were the feelings at the time. What about you? What was your feelings of at that time? Was grief coming up for you?
It's really it's an interesting topic for me because I had such a different experience with Nate when he was born versus Isaac when he was born. Nate was so immediately, comfortable with me, and I was comfortable with him. We would spend, I would wake up early and he would sit on my lap and we'd watch a show or play a game, and his laugh just was infectious and remains that way to this day. And I saw things in him that kind of made me just think this is a really special kid. And he had this red hair. Like he had so many things that I, I think that I was so smitten with him, um, that in a way that I don't think the bonding happened as quickly or as naturally with Isaac. Initially, obviously, eventually it's all fine. But that when this stuff happened, I kind of had this perspective of, well, first I'm going to be like in a wait and see mode. But eventually I did reach this moment where years went by. It became clear that he was not going to catch up.
Hmm.
Like that was not necessarily a useful thing to hold out for. And I allowed myself to ask a question that I'd really been avoiding asking myself, which is, do I do I wish he wasn't born? Like, do I wish we didn't do this? And it's like hard to even say it, even now.
Hmm.
But I just kind of had that honest reflection with myself. And the answer that came back was like, no, of course I absolutely am glad that he was born. Our family is so much more enriched by having him. He makes us all laugh. He makes us a better family. And this was already happening early on. I could see all of these things that our family was better off for having him. And that was like such a relief, I guess. that I
Yeah.
felt that way. And so it was a much more gentle process for me to where I got to acceptance more than I was grieving, if that makes sense.
hmm It does. And, just to share an aside, like, I remember when you had that conversation with yourself. I wasn't there for it, but I remember you.
My conversations myself are notoriously loud.
No, I just remember you telling me about that conversation afterwards.
Yeah.
And um, I took so much comfort from that. It really meant a lot to me to hear you say that. I think maybe I hadn't asked myself that yet, or maybe I was, like you said, scared of what my answer would have been. And hearing you set the tone in a way by sharing that and by being so emphatic about it, which was really helpful and really important.
I'm glad. And I also think that there's a couple things to mention there, which is you had been the one that had really been advocating for having a second kid. So I do think you were not because I was asking you to or making you feel this way, but I think you felt like you a little more responsible for kind of the
Sure.
situation and probably helped feel a little bit um of an exhale to know that like that wasn't something I was holding over you or angry at you about or anything like that. And I wasn't like there was 0% of that. But I don't want to paint this as like, oh my gosh, I'm such this amazingly accepting person or whatever. I'm not. I'm not. I have like opinions, as you know,
He
about
does.
I am really hard on myself. I'm really hard on other folks. I like watching Rachel try to not have this microphone make noise is an entertaining part that you guys will never actually get to see. Anyway.
It's harder than you think.
So I am a judgmental person and I am not someone that just accepts everything. And so I wasn't sure the answer would come back positively. And I would say if Nate had different needs,
hmm
I don't know if I would have felt the same way. If he was like taxing on me physically, if he would like there's all so many things that could have been different. And so I don't know if I just we're lucked into the situation where it just has been a really good addition to our family, or like you have so much experience with other parents and families, it seems like that's not the exception. It's more the rule that like most parents you interact with, maybe. I don't know. What do you
I
think?
would say almost without exception, the parents that I talk to are hopelessly devoted and in love and obsessed and um, thrilled to have their kids in their lives. Sometimes there's significant frustration and difficulties with
Yeah.
care. And I think for most of the parents I talk to, what that comes down to is not getting enough help. It's not about the child. It's not about they're unlovable or they're
Yeah.
not a good addition to our world and to our
Yeah.
family. It's that I don't have the help I need to really provide the care that this person requires. So
Is that surprising? Like, was that a surprise to you? I think most people that don't have not gone through this experience would be shocked to hear that.
I don't know. I mean, as a mom, like loving your kid is the most, and as a dad too, I'm not implying it's different for dads, but like as a parent, and I feel it in my own skin as the mom that like loving your kid is the most organic and natural and easiest thing to do.
Do you think that the process of kind of loving Nate was different than the process of loving Isaac, or is it really just your kid's your kid?
That's a good question because I do think there was a process because I had to with Nate, I had to like be intentional about pushing the fear out of the way. I think maybe said in a previous episode, like I had put so much pressure on this like 1 or 2 day old baby to be meeting milestones and to be like making progress and making eye contact and doing all these things. And that is a distraction. And I wasn't spending time staring at him and like, oh my God, I love him so much. He's so amazing. Because I was staring at him thinking, oh no, what if he's not doing this? And what if he's not doing that? So there was like their process is a good word, because I feel like there was a process of separating the fear from the love and devotion. And I had to be intentional with that. It didn't happen easily, automatically.
I'm not going to out anybody, but I've had conversations with really good friends, like drunken conversations where guys do this, where that's when you get really honest about stuff, right?
God.
And and I've shared like the kind of story we just talked about, that I really believe our lives are better off for having him. Period. Like no caveat to that. And as good friends, and they're like, "Well, are you sure you're not just kind of telling yourself that because you have no other choice, and you're just trying to make yourself feel better?" It's kind of a human thing to cope and
Mm-hmm.
like tell yourself a story. But I guess the reason I'm bringing that up is because I don't know if anyone else can really understand genuinely how much joy we get from our child who has a disability as much as we get from our child who does not have a disability. And I'm wondering, like, I think you've had some experiences as well where maybe you had some realizations about, what maybe you thought wasn't going to be possible and actually was. I mean, I know you kind of observed other moms with disabled kids, and maybe had some thoughts about what they were experiencing that you weren't sure you were going to ever experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I think other moms played a huge role in my like grieving process, or in my journey. God, we use the word journey so much in this.
Process of acceptance.
um, when Nate was around 3, I finally, I don't know, maybe you would say, moved out of a denial mode and
Yeah.
realized, all right, no, I'm definitely the parent of a child with a disability or with
Long-term
special
disability.
needs. And
Yeah.
um and I was invited to a mom's night out, a dinner out with other moms of kids with disabilities. And it was a life-changing experience. I know what you're referring to is a really surprising observation I made when I was there. I distinctly remember looking around at this group of moms who were laughing and having fun and sharing stories and talking about their kids and talking about not their kids, and like just being moms out with other moms. And I remember being actually surprised that they were laughing and having fun, and thinking, I honestly didn't know that you, it sounds so naive now and so unkind, but I didn't know at the time that you could have a child with a disability, and that you were going to laugh and have joy and have fun and make friends and do normal mom stuff. Like, I had really thought that was behind me. And being with other moms was, aside from that reminder, also just a tremendous source of support and reassurance and comfort.
That seems like a recurring reality for parents in general, um, which is, and just people in general, is like finding your people that have shared experiences that you can talk to. And um, like you're with Isaac, you had a PEPS group. What is it? Parent
I
for,
think it's Program for
or
Early Parenthood Support.
yeah, okay, sorry. So it's at least a local program here, I think. Anyway, in any event, you made really close friends. They all had kids roughly the same time. They're going through similar milestones and similar challenges, and like really close friends came out of that. A community came out of that for
Yeah.
you. And then with Nate, you also had a PEPS group, but it didn't necessarily result in the same connections.
Mhm.
I don't know if some of it was, if you'd attribute it to Nate having different, like not being in the same place as them,
Mhm.
but like it sounds like finding some people that were experiencing something similar to you was a key part of kind of getting to that acceptance and kind of getting past the grieving process.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that second PEPS group, and this is the case, I think, when you're around most groups of new moms, spend a lot of time comparing our kids and sharing stories about our kids and commiserating about common challenges or bragging about reaching developmental milestones. And when you're the parent of the mom who is not meeting those when you're the parent of the kid who is not meeting those milestones, and when the stories that parents are describing are just radically different than the things going on in your house, it makes connecting harder, and it ends up feeling really isolating. And I my recollection of being around other moms at that time, and this isn't about that PEPS group. They were lovely people, and I'm friends with some of them to this day. It's more about whatever group of moms it would have been. Like I sat in a room full of moms feeling very alone.
I'm glad you kind of brought that up and or spoke to it in the way that you did, because there's always a danger, at least I'm always concerned in these conversations, where it is genuine, we're being authentic, that we did get to a point in different ways where we're just so thrilled that we have what we have, and we're so happy with the family we have, and it's been great, and we have 20 years now to look back on all this stuff. But it's not that way for everybody, and it's not that way at the same pace for everybody, and there's different pieces, and I do think it's for people that are listening to this that are maybe not yet there and are in that dark place, it might help to hear a little bit more from you about what did dark mean? Like, what did that mean in terms of how you were handling yourself in that time?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind when you said, what did dark mean? The word joyless, which is like really a shame because I had these two incredibly joyful children. Like they squeezed every moment out of life in those days, from like sunrise to
Yeah,
sunset.
true.
And I was right there next to them, not necessarily sharing that joyful feeling. So so that might be a way to describe what I meant as dark, like consuming worry, spinning thoughts. Like I remember one time the kids were making chaos about something, and I just really wanted them to stop so that I could focus on my worry. Like I was trying to worry about something and trying to process something in my head, and they were forcing me to be present. And I remember being really frustrated about that. That's crazy. I should have just been present. But anyway, I think that's what the darkness was. And the process of moving out of that into more of the mindset and the place where we are now was long. I've already said being around other parents made a
Mm-hmm.
huge difference. For me, learning about disability, learning about like disability advocacy and the disability community and culture and the topics of interest, that was made a real change for me. Like it helped me to understand that disability is not inherently a bad thing. And when I could kind of understand that as a concept, it was really lovely to be able to apply that to my life and to my family, and it made a big difference.
Well, toward the end, I think we'll talk a little bit about some tips that we would have for ourselves or for others and some
Mm-hmm.
resources. And so we'll come back to things that I think are related to what you're talking about. But I also want to like take maybe a little bit of a um, dangerous step. I don't know if that's the right word, but acknowledge something that also is a little bit different for having a disabled kid in that, especially in that period. And it is kind of friends and family. And I mean, that whole group where even like the PEPS group, let's say, it wasn't super abnormal for you to be able to, with Isaac's PEPS group, potentially be able to say, hey, X, Y, would you mind watching him for an afternoon or for a few hours while I run an errand or whatever? But once you have a child with a disability, whether or not it's a big deal to watch them, everyone immediately assumes it's a big deal. And all of a sudden your options of people that are, it's not like they're bad people, like their intent is negative at all, but there's like, I don't know what to do. This child's different. I
Mhm.
don't trust myself to handle this. What if I don't know what to do? And like it causes this great receding where people just kind of step back.
Mhm.
And I think that increases this feeling
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
isolation. Is that, do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think it really is. And I think not, that is what we experience. And that's not unique to us. I hear that from families all the time. But I'll tell you that there, when that happens, there are some people that don't recede. And those are the people that stand out more than anything. We always have joked that Nate is a people barometer. We've said that like he helps us measure how good of a person someone is. We could just tell by how they react to him, how they respond to him. And the people who have not stepped back over the years or have not shown fear and have instead shown like devotion and an interest in learning has like, I mean, I can't ever, oh, I don't know how to say this, but like that meant everything. And
Yeah.
it still does.
Yeah, and this, the reason this is a little fraught for us, if you are, you know, a more recent acquaintance or whatever, like we have family members that are listening to this. This is not us sending a message to anybody about like
No.
you did something wrong or you're doing something wrong or anything like that. But I think it's a really important thing just to understand that it is it is understandable that people are going to feel less confident and less comfortable caring for a person with a disability.
Yeah. I mean, I felt less
That's how,
confident caring for
right.
Nate. So I understand that would, it's going to be hard. And honestly, I mean, I hope we devote a whole episode to our families, but honestly, our families are beautiful examples of learning and wanting to do right by Nate and doing everything they can. I really think that.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, it is. I'll just say one more second on this. Is it is fascinating to me that the reality is, for the most part, more caretakers that we've worked with kind of just get bored because there's not a lot to do. Like there's actually less to do
Taking care of
taking
Nate.
care of him
Yeah.
than maybe the typical kid. But the perception from the outside would be, oh my gosh, I have to have all these skills to be able
Hmm.
to do this. And um, maybe you need to do masquerades, be able to like interpret his what he's trying to communicate.
Yeah, little charades,
Charades,
not
not
masquerades.
masquerades. Thank you. I appreciate it. You should really take over this whole podcast at this point. That was awful. Um, but anyway, I just thought that was an important piece. What am I missing? Anything else from that kind of period that was a key piece that other people might be experiencing, or lessons that you learned, tips that you would give yourself if you were going back to that time?
I would say one other thing that we haven't really talked about in this conversation is asking for help and reaching out for help. And that is really hard to do. I was really devoted to the idea that I am a mom who can do this by myself, that I can handle
Mm-hmm.
things. And at around 3, 4 years old, it started to be obvious I can't handle this on my own. And I like kind of drummed up courage to to reach out for help in the community. And I think having the pressure released a little bit by having some help contributed to a reduction in the fear, like getting some time off, getting some breaks. Like you said, it's not easy. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
easy to find people to look after Nate
Mm-hmm.
at that time. And so while you're trying to process and you're trying to adjust, you also are working like 24 hours a
Mm-hmm.
day. And so to get some help, to get a break, I think was a really critical part of that process.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that makes sense. One other thing, as you were talking, I recalled that may have been me specific. I don't know if it was you, but as the earner in the family, and the person that, like, the way our relationships worked is I've kind of been the person focused on the money in general, and our financial security and that kind of thing. And I grew up in a family where both my mom and my dad had jobs and earned, and we'd already made this decision that you were gonna stay at home. That was initially your choice, and I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't super thrilled when you
Right.
first said that. I was like, "It's all on me, okay."
Mm-hmm.
But this had this additional layer to it for me, where it's like, okay, I know, like in the back of my head, I'm like planning for Isaac to go to college, and then there's a certain point where he graduates and he'll eventually be independent. I'm already thinking about our parents and the potential that we're going to need to help them at
Mm-hmm.
some point when they're toward the end of their time. And I kind of had this rough idea of how much money we were going to need, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, he may not. At that point, I was not thinking he would ever leave the house, and that we would have to care for him our whole life, and we'd have to have enough money not only for us to eventually retire, but we're gonna have enough money that even when we're gone,
Mm-hmm.
that he's cared for, so it doesn't become a burden on Isaac. And like, that was where, if anything, I
That
spun
was the
out.
future tripping you were doing.
That was the future tripping
Yeah.
I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still, we'll talk about that a little bit more. There's things we learned along those lines that I think are important, but I just want to, for the dads that are listening, or the folks that are the earners, or the people that are in their relationships, or they're independent, maybe they're a single person. That was also
Yeah.
something that was going on for me at that time.
And I think as something that's noteworthy is that until this moment, or until the year or two leading up to this moment, you and I had been very parallel. We met in college, we dated all through college, graduated, and we were both college students, and then we graduated, and we were both young people working in the world, and I'm coming home in the evening and sharing our lives together. And then we had these two kids, and our lives kind of radically diverged, and you were focusing and absorbed at work, and I was focusing and absorbed at home. And your list of worries that you just described, believe me, that is not what I was worrying about. Like, my list of worries was completely different. And so that's another thing that was probably,
Yeah.
there was grief around that too, is like, for the first time in our relationship, we were still equal partners, but we weren't like splitting everything 50-50 like we had done before, and living these parallel lives. So I think
Yeah.
that's worth noting too.
Yeah. That's such a great point. Um, is there anything that you've talked about a little bit? Anything else that you regret, or that you feel like you would do differently if you could do it over again?
Yeah, I regret all that grieving and fear and darkness. I don't blame myself for it.
Mm-hmm.
It just was. Um, but gosh, what a shame. What a shame to like have these two amazing, beautiful, funny, smart, incredible, energetic children, and to be like, could you guys be quiet? I'm trying to worry here. Like, it's really a shame. And if you go back and listen to our first episode, when I described the kind of family I wanted, it was a joyful, happy,
Yeah.
fun family. So I regret that I lost that
Yeah.
for a while. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that has come up for me before, and I have a good feeling I know what you're going to say about this, which is important too, but money again. I was like,
You regret worrying about money?
no, it's related.
You're like, no, not that.
I was that too, but no, I knew that we could be doing things like private therapy that were significantly more expensive than what insurance was going to provide. With a lack of diagnosis, you don't get necessarily all this. Like, he didn't have an autism diagnosis at that point, which meant there was services and support and all sorts of things you didn't qualify for. And so, but we could have decided, well, we know he needs this. We're going to get the best speech therapist, and we're going to get the best, ABA at that point might have been something. And there's these stories about kids that get these intense early interventions that then have breakthroughs, but it is so much money. And I was like, I don't know if it's really worth it. And so I do have some question about like if we had done that, would that have been, even if it put us in debt and we were like had a totally different situation, was that the right thing to do? And would he have been better off if we had done that?
Hmm.
So that's one thing that kind of comes up.
Well, I appreciate that. I will tell you, if it's any consolation, I don't regret that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't regret not going broke, spending hours and hours in therapy, devoting our life to therapy and to fixing him and to this breakthrough that I know there's stories that that happens, but it doesn't really happen. It's very rare. I like I my take is that if we had spent all that money and all that time and like prioritized above everything else his development, I don't know that we would have gotten to the happy and gotten to the good part. I think that sounds joyless to me.
I love I love that you said that, and I there's a lot of that resonates with me, which is there is some notion of that you're trying to keep the tide from coming in, and like it is like nature is going to do what it's going to do, and this notion that you have some control or that you can change it
Right.
is a
Right.
little bit of hubris. But I, I certainly have never
Hmm.
lacked in that over my life. So, you know, I appreciate that. And I think there is a truth that we could have ended up in a much worse place. And that maybe we're very fortunate that we did take that path. So I would put that out there. Well, I want to, I think we always want to try to keep these to reasonable bite sized episodes. The last part that I want to cover is where you talked about how important it is to connect with other people and how
Hmm.
that shows up. What are some ways that people can do that? Are there online groups? Are there like
Hmm.
government? Like, what are some options for people to look at?
Yeah. I mean, first, I think social media can be great.
Which
And
is wild to hear.
I know, I know. I mean, enter with caution, like go in and observe before you say anything. Some of these groups can get dicey. I know that. But also the it is an amazing opportunity to connect with other parents who are doing what you're doing and to learn from them, to be inspired by them, to be encouraged by them, to have a place to vent. We've talked here about like it's important to us not to overshare about Nate in a public forum, but in a private group, when I'm talking to moms in a support kind of setting, it is a good opportunity for me to be able to share some of the details in a private place. Social media can be awesome. Um, I also encourage you to look into Parent to Parent. Parent to Parent is a national program that has locations in almost every state in the country, including Washington. And in Washington, we have a Parent to Parent in every single county. It's a program in every county that helps parents of kids with disabilities connect with other parents of kids with disabilities. So I really encourage you to seek it out if you're looking for that type of community.
That's great. That's super helpful. Um, this last thing I'll just want to offer, and this is for folks that I don't know, I guess it's for everybody, but I want to just emphasize how much of a difference people can make around the person that's a
Hmm.
parent with a kid that has a disability. The smallest thing. I mean, when somebody offers to carpool with us and like take him home from someplace, it's huge. It's really huge. It like honestly makes like it makes a big difference for us. Um, if you can think of ways that you can take even the smallest bit of effort off of the parent that you know or the friend that you know or whatever, um just know it's like one of the most generous things that you can do, and it's really hard. So I'm not saying it's like super easy, but try to find maybe easy things that you can imagine doing. um
Do you know what my similar thing to that
yeah.
is? The thing that other people have done and can do that make a huge difference to me is to love Nate.
Yeah, great one.
Right? Like when people take the time to
Seeing
get to know
him.
him, when they see him, when they love him and think he's hysterical and think he's like as great as we think he is, that is the best therapy.
And not in a
That
patronizing like
no,
way, but
no,
like
not in an inspirational go Nate kind of way. That's not what I'm talking
yeah,
about. I'm talking about like authentically seeing who he is
yeah,
and really liking him and
yeah,
appreciating him. Like
yeah,
that is worth more than therapy any day to me.
yeah. That's great. That's great. All right, love. I think that's a wrap on episode 3. You good with that?
I love that stopping there. That's great.
All right. Well, everybody, if you have any feedback about the show, you have topics you want us to cover, you think there's people we should speak to, all that kind of stuff, you can reach me at Brian, Brian, at Nemhouse, Nemohouse, .com is the email address. And then we also started a Patreon, patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Nemhouse, Nemhouse. And it's free to join as a member. You don't have to pay a thing. There are some folks that are doing the money based support, which is great, and that's going to go to a charity at some point that we'll figure out. But you can just join as a free member, and if you're a listener, you can find potentially other listeners by joining that community and seeing what's going on there. So hopefully over time, that's a place where more people can find other people to connect with. But otherwise, just please keep sharing the show with whoever you think would benefit. And we appreciate you all. So we're having fun doing this, and we hope you're having fun listening. So take care. We'll see you next episode.
Bye, everyone.